The stars shone brightly over Proxima Station, the massive structure hanging like a jewel against the backdrop of space. Inside the Grand Council chambers, tension filled the air. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in tiered seating that circled the central speaking platform. Admiral Velen stood tall, his azure skin catching the light as he moved. His compound eyes reflected the concerned faces of the council members as he raised a four-fingered hand toward the holographic display. Esteemed council members, Velen's voice resonated through the chamber. The situation requires our immediate attention. The hologram shifted to show a blue-green planet, Earth, rotating slowly in the projection field. Data scrolled alongside the image, showing population statistics, technological development curves, and energy signatures. This isolated world has developed far more rapidly than any species we have encountered, Velen continued. Their technological progress following their climate wars and the asteroid impact that nearly ended their civilization defies all known developmental patterns. Murmurs spread through the chamber. A reptilian delegate rose from her seat. "How advanced are they?" she asked, scales shifting color with her concern. Velen touched a control panel, and the hologram changed to show human spacecraft. Simple vehicles by Confederate standards, but advanced enough to be concerning. They have achieved limited interplanetary travel within their home system. Their understanding of physics suggests they are perhaps 50 years from discovering principles that would lead to faster-than-light travel, Velen explained. What concerns us most is their military development. The hologram changed again, showing clips of human warfare. Images carefully selected by Confederate intelligence to highlight humanity's capacity for violence. Council members recoiled at the scenes. They are fractious, aggressive, and remarkably resilient, Velen said. The standard approach would be to offer protectorate status rather than full membership in the Confederacy. A probationary period of no less than 200 years seems prudent. Half a light year away, in the gleaming towers of Seoul's United Earth Government headquarters, Director Taeyong Park sat in his office. The room's large windows offered a view of the city's skyline, where ancient palaces stood alongside modern structures of glass and sustainable materials. Park's eyes narrowed as he read the diplomatic proposal from the Galactic Confederacy for the 5th time. General Haejin Lee paced beside his desk, her military uniform crisp and her expression stormy. Protectorate status. Lee stopped pacing to tap the screen angrily. After everything humanity has survived. After we pulled ourselves back from the brink of extinction, not once but twice. Park ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. They've made their position clear. We would have no voting rights in their council for 2 centuries. All our military forces would fall under Confederate oversight. They fear us, Lee said, leaning against the desk. That much is obvious. With reason, perhaps. Park stood and walked to the window. From their perspective, we are unpredictable. The asteroid impact that nearly wiped us out a century ago should have ended our civilization. Instead, it united us. Lee joined him at the window. Unity born of necessity. We had no choice but to work together after losing 3 billion people. And now we face a different kind of threat, Park said. Being treated as second-class citizens of the galaxy. They see us as dangerous children to be controlled, not equals to be respected. Their conversation was interrupted when Park's communication device chimed urgently. A young aide appeared on screen, her face pale. Director, we have an emergency transmission from the Confederate liaison. Something has happened at Proxima Centauri B. Park and Lee exchanged glances before Park accepted the call. The face of a Confederate diplomat appeared, his feathered crest flattened with distress. Director Park, we have lost contact with our settlement on Proxima Centauri V. All communications ceased approximately 3 hours ago. The last transmissions indicated they were under attack. Attack. Park leaned forward. By whom? Unknown. We are sending investigation vessels. But the nearest Confederate military ship is 4 days away. After the call ended, Park stared at the blank screen. What do you make of it? General. Convenient timing, Lee said. Just as they're pressing us to demilitarize and accept their protection, they suddenly face a threat they can't handle. You think it's fabricated? Park asked. Lee shook her head. No. The fear in that diplomat's eyes was genuine. But I think this changes our situation significantly. Within 3 days, reports arrived of similar attacks on 3 more Confederate systems. The mysterious attackers moved with frightening speed and efficiency, overwhelming local defenses before disappearing again. Park attended an emergency briefing where Confederate representatives finally provided more information. The attackers were called the Scourge, an ancient enemy the Confederacy had fought generations ago and believed defeated. The Scourge are not a single species, explained the Confederate military liaison, a tall being with gray skin. They are cybernetically enhanced warriors from dozens of conquered worlds, all linked to a hive intelligence. They consume resources and incorporate useful technologies and biological traits from those they conquer. Images played on the screen, showing black ships with organic-looking protrusions. The footage from attack settlements showed horrifying efficiency in their assaults. Park noticed something in the Confederate liaison's manner, a nervousness beyond appropriate concern. Your peacetime fleet isn't equipped to handle this threat, is it? Park asked directly. The liaison's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of distress in his species. The Confederacy has enjoyed centuries of peace. Our military exists primarily as a peacekeeping force. Park shared a knowing look with General Lee before turning back to the liaison. Then perhaps it's time to discuss how Earth might contribute to the joint defense of our region of space. As the meeting concluded, Park and Lee walked together through the corridor. They'll be coming to us for help soon enough, Lee said quietly. And when they do? Park nodded. When they do, we'll be ready to negotiate from a position of strength. It's time to accelerate the Thermopylae project. Outside, night had fallen over Seoul. Park looked up at the stars, now knowing what threats lurked among them. Humanity had survived extinction before. They would survive this too, on their own terms. Ambassador Ju Kim walked with measured steps across the observation deck of the Luna defense platform. Her black diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed, her posture straight and dignified. She showed nothing of the amusement she felt as she watched the Confederate delegation's reactions. The 6 alien representatives followed her, their various appendages and sensory organs twitching with poorly concealed disappointment. Behind them trailed a group of human military officers, all carefully briefed on their roles in this elaborate deception. As you can see, Kim gestured toward the viewport showing Earth's lone space station. Our orbital capabilities are modest but functional. Through the reinforced glass, a small fleet of Earth vessels floated in formation. The ships were real enough, but they were outdated models pulled from museums and training facilities, hastily refitted to appear operational. Some had been in storage for decades. Sub-Commander Trell moved closer to the glass. His insectoid body towered over Kim, mandibles clicking rapidly as he examined the human ships. The humans had learned this was an expression of disappointment or confusion. "This is all you have?" Trell asked, his translator converting the clicks and chirps into smooth Korean. Kim allowed herself a small, humble smile. "We are a peaceful people. After the climate wars and the asteroid impact, we focused our resources on rebuilding our world, not expanding our military presence." The tallest delegate, a fluid-filled environment suit containing a methane-breathing diplomat named Oro, gurgled something to his companion. The translation came through their shared devices. Primitive, barely space-capable. The reports were greatly exaggerated. Kim pretended not to hear. "If you'll follow me, I can show you our command center. From there, we coordinate Earth's modest defense network." As she led them through sliding doors into a busy control room, Kim exchanged a quick glance with General Park, who stood monitoring communications. Their subtle nod of acknowledgement went unnoticed by the visitors. The control room buzzed with activity that had been carefully orchestrated for this tour. Officers moved between stations, examining data on screens showing Earth's sensor network. All of it was real, just not Earth's most advanced technology. We have early warning systems extending to the edge of our solar system, Kim explained. Though nothing as sophisticated as Confederate technology, of course. Trell's compound eyes swept across the room. Your ships appear to use chemical propulsion. Do you have anything faster? We have experimental ion drives, Kim replied truthfully. Earth had indeed developed ion drives over 50 years ago. They allow our vessels to reach Mars in just under 2 months. Another delegate, a crystalline being who communicated through light patterns, flashed what translated as laughter. The scourge would destroy your entire fleet before your ships could even turn to face them. Kim lowered her eyes in a show of concern. That is why we are grateful for Confederate protection. But we will contribute what we can to the joint defense effort. Yes, Trell said, mandibles now still. Every ship counts in this fight, no matter how limited. After the tour concluded and the delegation returned to their ship in orbit, Kim entered a secure communication room deep within the lunar facility. She placed her palm on a scanner, and a hidden door slid open. Inside, Director Park waited with several military officers around a table displaying a very different set of information than what the aliens had seen. How did our guests enjoy the show? Park asked, his eyes crinkling with restrained amusement. They were suitably unimpressed, Kim replied, finally allowing herself a real smile. They believe exactly what we want them to believe. Park nodded with satisfaction. Good. The deception buys us the time we need. He tapped the table display, and it changed to show a real-time feed from somewhere much farther away, beyond the orbit of Neptune, hidden from conventional detection systems. In the classified shipyards beyond Neptune, Chief Engineer Minho Kang floated in zero gravity beside the hull of the most advanced vessel humans had ever built. His magnetic boots occasionally touched the surface to stop his drift as he examined the outer plating. The UES Thermopylae stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, its dark hull absorbing rather than reflecting light. Unlike the boxy utilitarian designs the Confederacy had seen, this ship featured smooth lines and an angular predatory shape. Minho's engineering team moved across the hull like ants on a fallen tree, making final adjustments to sensor arrays and weapon ports that lay flush with the surface when not in use. "Beautiful, isn't she?" came a voice through his communication system. Minho turned to see another suited figure approaching across the hull. The name Derisi Tior Song was printed across the chest of the environmental suit. 15 years of secret development, Minho replied. Sometimes I still can't believe we managed to keep it hidden. The asteroid belt facilities helped, Director Song said. Mining operations make excellent cover for large-scale manufacturing. And the Confederate arrogance helped even more. They never thought to look closely at what we were doing out here. Minho ran a gloved hand over the whole material. They have no idea what we've achieved. This adaptive alloy alone is centuries ahead of their metallurgy. And the gravity drive. Operational. It's not just faster than light. It's faster than anything in the Confederate fleet. We'll be able to appear and disappear before their sensors can even register our presence. A notification flashed in Minho's helmet display. Captain Rio is requesting my presence on the bridge. Final systems check. Inside the massive vessel, corridors hummed with activity as crew members prepared for the ship's first potential combat mission. The bridge was spacious but efficiently designed, with workstations arranged in concentric circles around the central command area. Captain Haijin Ryu stood studying a holographic display of nearby star systems when Minho entered. Her short hair was pulled back from her face, her expression focused and determined. Chief Engineer, she acknowledged him with a nod. Are we ready? Minho moved to the engineering station and checked the readouts. Everything was functioning at optimal levels. The reactor core stable, the gravitational drive primed, weapons systems fully operational. Reactor nominal, gravitational drive online. Weapon systems green across the board, he reported, unable to keep a note of pride from his voice. "We're ready, Captain." Ryu nodded and turned to face the main view screen, where the distant sun appeared as just another bright star. "The Confederate Council has requested Earth's assistance," she said. "Apparently the Scourge have attacked another system. They're expecting us to send our modest fleet as a show of good faith." "Little do they know," Minho said with a slight smile. "Indeed." Ryu's expression remained serious. "The Thermopylae will remain hidden until the right moment. When that moment comes—" She paused, looking around at her crew, the best Earth had to offer, trained in secret for this mission. Minho completed her thought. "Let's hope the Confederacy appreciates our contribution." As final preparations continued around them, Minho couldn't help but feel a mixture of pride and anticipation. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity was not to be underestimated. The deception had been necessary, even wise. But now, as the Scourge threatened all civilized worlds, it was time to reveal what humans were truly capable of. The Arcturus system burned. What had once been a thriving Confederate outpost was now a battlefield strewn with the broken hulls of ships. The massive space station that served as the system's administrative center still orbited the blue-white star, but its protective fleet lay in ruins around it. Admiral Velon clung to his command chair as another explosion rocked his flagship. The lights flickered, and emergency alarms blared throughout the vessel. Blood from a head wound dripped down his blue face, staining his uniform. "Status report," he demanded, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting commands. His tactical officer, a young Mendari female, looked up from her damaged console. "Main engines offline. Shields at 12%. Life support failing on decks 3 through 7. Outside the viewport, Velon could see the Scourge vessels moving in for the kill. Their black ships resembled twisted insects, with organic-looking protrusions that housed their devastating weapons. 3 of them were closing in on his crippled flagship, while others moved toward the defenseless space station. "How many civilian ships managed to evacuate?" Velon asked. 17 transports cleared the system, the communications officer reported, but at least 20,000 civilians remain on Arcturus station. Velon closed his compound eyes briefly. The Confederacy had grown complacent during centuries of peace. Their warships were outdated, their tactics unprepared for the Scourge's sudden return. Now they were paying the price. He opened a channel to broadcast on the emergency frequency. His voice was steady despite the situation. "This is Admiral Velon of the Confederate Defense Fleet. Any available Confederate vessels? Arcturus Station has 20,000 civilians. We cannot hold much longer." The message repeated, echoing across the system and beyond through the Confederate communication network. But Velon knew it was futile. The nearest reinforcements were hours away, and his fleet would be destroyed in minutes. Sub-Commander Trell stood at the tactical station of the support cruiser Vigilant. His ship had survived by staying at the edge of the battle, but its weapons were too weak to make any difference against the Scourge dreadnoughts. "Admiral Velon's flagship is being surrounded," Trell reported to his captain. "Scourge vessels are positioning to destroy it." "There's nothing we can do," the captain replied grimly. "Prepare to retreat to the jump point." Suddenly, the sensor operator's antenna stiffened. "Captain, something just appeared at the edge of the system. It's huge." On the main view screen, a massive ship had appeared where nothing had been moments before. It was unlike any vessel Trell had ever seen. Angular and predatory, with a dark hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It bore no Confederate markings. "Is it another Scourge vessel?" the captain asked, mandibles clicking nervously. Before Trell could respond, a communication came through on all frequencies. "This is Captain Hyejin Ryu of the United Earth ship Thermopylae. We are responding to your distress call. Stand by for assistance." Trell's compound eyes widened. "Earth? The humans sent only one ship." The captain turned to him. "Didn't you inspect their fleet just last week?" "Yes," Trell replied, confusion evident in his voice. "Nothing like this. They showed us obsolete vessels barely capable of interplanetary travel." On Admiral Velan's flagship, the same message had been received. Velan stared at the view screen in disbelief. "The humans?" he whispered. "What can one ship do against this scourge fleet?" His question was answered immediately. The human vessel, the Thermopylae, began to move. And it moved like nothing Velan had ever seen before. Instead of the lumbering progress of a ship its size, it crossed the distance to the battlefield in seconds, positioning itself between the flagship and the approaching scourge vessels. The scourge responded immediately, firing their disruptor beams, weapons that had cut through Confederate shields like paper. The beams struck the human vessel directly. And nothing happened. The Thermopylae's hull simply absorbed the energy, showing no signs of damage. No shields were visible. The attack simply had no effect. "Impossible," Velan breathed. The human ship then opened fire. Smaller weapons along its hull tracked and destroyed incoming scourge projectiles with perfect accuracy. Each shot found its mark, never missing, never wasting energy. On the Vigilant, Trell watched in shock as his tactical display updated. The defense systems on the human ship were operating with a precision that suggested, "They're using predictive AI in their weapons systems," he said aloud. "That's forbidden by Confederate law." "Apparently the humans didn't get that message," his captain replied dryly. The Thermopylae moved again, positioning itself to face the main scourge fleet. 3 massive dreadnoughts turned to attack the human vessel, their weapons charging. Before they could fire, something unprecedented happened. Space itself seemed to distort around the front of the human ship. A barely visible ripple extended outward, like heat waves on a desert planet. When it reached the 3 scourge dreadnoughts, they simply collapsed. Their hulls crumpled inward as if crushed by an invisible hand, imploding into dense masses of twisted metal and organic matter. Trell dropped his tactical display in shock. It clattered to the deck as he stared at the view screen. "Impossible," he whispered. "They showed us nothing of this." His captain was equally stunned. What weapon could do that? "Some kind of gravitational manipulation," Trell managed to say, "far beyond anything in Confederate science." The remaining scourge vessels turned their attention to the Thermopylae, converging on it from all directions. But the human ship moved with that same impossible speed, evading their attacks while continuing to fire its weapons with perfect accuracy. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, Captain Hyjin Ryu stood calmly at the center of a storm of activity. Crew members called out reports from their stations as the ship engaged the enemy. Gravitational drive functioning at optimal levels, the navigation officer reported. "We're outmaneuvering them easily." "Hull integrity at 100%, added the defensive systems officer. "Their weapons can't penetrate our adaptive alloy." Ryu nodded. "Prepare the compression cannon for another firing sequence. Target the vessels approaching the station." As the battle continued, Admiral Velan used the opportunity to move his damaged flagship toward the jump point where it could escape. But he couldn't take his eyes off the human vessel. "They deceived us," he said to his second-in-command. "All this time. Why would they hide such capabilities?" the officer asked. Velan had no answer. His understanding of humans, of their history, their motivations, their potential, had been completely wrong. Within 30 minutes, it was over. The Scourge fleet was destroyed or had retreated. Arcturus Station and its 20,000 civilians were safe. And the Confederacy had been shown, in the most dramatic way possible, that humanity was not what they had believed. As the Thermopylae moved alongside Velan's damaged flagship to offer assistance, the Admiral received a direct communication from Captain Ryu. "Admiral Velan," she said, her face appearing on his view screen. She looked calm, almost serene after the battle. "Your ship appears to be in need of repairs. We have medical and engineering teams ready to assist." Velan stared at the human captain. You had this capability all along." Captain Ryu smiled slightly. The United Earth government believes in being prepared, Admiral. We chose not to display all our capabilities during your inspection tours. But why reveal yourselves now? Because 20,000 lives were at stake, Ryu replied simply. And because it's time the Confederacy understood that humanity wishes to be treated as equals, not children. As transfer shuttles departed the Thermopylae to assist the damaged Confederate vessels, Sub-Commander Trell stood watching from the Vigilance observation deck. The political ramifications of what he had witnessed would echo through the Confederacy for years to come. The humans had not only saved them, they had changed everything. The Grand Council chamber on Proxima Station had never seen such disorder. The circular room, designed for calm deliberation among the galaxy's most advanced species, had descended into chaos. 200 representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations shouted over each other, their translators struggling to keep pace with the outbursts. In the center of this storm stood Ambassador Ju Kim of Earth. She wore a simple black diplomatic uniform with Earth's new emblem, a stylized globe with a single star above it. Unlike the aliens around her, she remained perfectly composed, hands clasped behind her back. On the massive screens surrounding the chamber, footage from the Battle of Arcturus played on a loop. The Thermopylae moved with impossible speed, its weapons tearing through scourge vessels that had decimated the Confederate fleet. The gravitational compression cannon activated again and again, crushing enemy ships like toys. "Order," shouted the council moderator, a tall being with crystalline skin that flashed with colored light when agitated. "We will have order." Gradually, the noise subsided. Councillor Dren, representative of the Morrigan Collective, rose from his seat. His 4 tentacles writhed in agitation, the suckers along their length pulsing with angry red light. "You deliberately missiled the Confederacy about your military capabilities," he accused, pointing all 4 tentacles at Ambassador Kim. "Your people showed us outdated technology and claimed it was your best. You violated the trust of the Confederacy." A murmur of agreement spread through many of the representatives. Ambassador Kim waited for it to subside before responding. "We showed you exactly what you expected to see," Kim replied evenly. Her voice was calm, but carried throughout the chamber. "You assumed we were primitive because it suited your preconceptions. We simply allowed that assumption to stand. That is deliberate deception," huffed the Xanthi representative, his feathered crest fully extended in indignation. "Is it?" Kim turned to face him directly. "When your delegation visited Earth, did anyone ask to see our most advanced technology? Did anyone ask about gravitational manipulation or advanced alloys?" She paused, letting the silence answer for her. "Your reports classified us as a developing species before your ships even entered our solar system. You offered us protectorate status rather than full membership. You treated us as children to be guided rather than equals to be respected." Admiral Velen, still bearing bandages from the battle, stepped forward. "Ambassador Kim speaks truth," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his rank. "I was present at Arcturus. Without the Thermopylae, we would have lost the system and 20,000 civilian lives." "One ship," exclaimed Councillor Merck, a gaseous being contained within an environment suit. "One human ship did what our entire fleet could not." "Which raises the question," said the Lur representative, her scales shifting color from blue to green. "What other ships do they have that we don't know about?" The chamber erupted again. Kim stood silently, allowing the speculation to flow around her. Earth had indeed kept many secrets. The Thermopylae was only one of 3 such vessels completed, with 5 more under construction. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. When the noise subsided again, Kim spoke. "The United Earth government wishes to renegotiate the terms of our relationship with the Confederacy. We seek full membership, with all rights and responsibilities that entails." After this deception, Dren's tentacles coiled in outrage. "After proving our worth," Kim corrected, "Earth stands ready to commit our full capabilities to the defense of the Confederacy against the scourge threat." The council moderator's crystalline body pulsed with light. This session will recess for 1 hour while representatives consult with their governments. As the chamber emptied, Kim was approached by Admiral Velen. "You played a dangerous game, Ambassador," he said quietly. "We play the only game available to us," she replied. "Your people were never going to respect us as equals until we proved ourselves." Velen's compound eyes studied her. "And now? What game do you play now?" Kim smiled slightly. "Now we play as equals, Admiral, if you'll allow it." Meanwhile, aboard the Thermopylae, Captain Hyjin Ryu suppressed a sigh as she welcomed the fourth delegation of alien dignitaries that day. The ship had become something of a tourist attraction, with Confederate officials and military officers all clamoring for a tour. Lieutenant Doyen Choi led the current group, a collection of technical specialists from various species. They moved through the ship's corridors, eyes and other sensory organs taking in everything. "This deck houses our secondary propulsion systems," Choi explained, gesturing to a sealed doorway. "The primary gravitational drive is located in the central core and is off-limits to visitors." A Xanthi engineer stepped forward, his hands moving rapidly as he spoke. "The speed we witnessed in the battle footage, it cannot be achieved through conventional means. Your ship appeared to bend space itself. The propulsion system uses principles of gravitational manipulation," Choi replied with practiced ease. "And no, we cannot discuss the details of our shield technology," he added, anticipating the next question. "Not shields," corrected a Mendari scientist. "Your hull absorbed the energy directly. We detected no shield harmonics." Choi smiled politely. "As I said, we cannot discuss the details of our defensive systems." The tour continued, with the aliens growing increasingly frustrated at the limited information they were receiving. Earth had decided to reveal its existence, but not all its secrets. In a private conference room elsewhere on the ship, Commander Jizongyu met with representatives from the Lyr Ascendancy, one of the older species in the Confederacy. Unlike the official tour, this meeting was not on any schedule. "My government is impressed by your ship's performance," said the Lyr ambassador, her scales now a deep purple, a sign of respect in her species. "We have long found the Confederate structure limiting." You nodded but remained silent, letting the ambassador continue. "The Lyr would be interested in a separate alliance with Earth, an exchange of technologies perhaps, mutual defense commitments." "I'm sure Ambassador Kim would be interested to hear this proposal," you replied carefully. "We prefer to keep this conversation private for now," the Lyr ambassador said. "The Confederacy has maintained stability for centuries, but perhaps it is time for evolution." After the Lyr delegation departed, Yu made notes in his secure terminal. This was the 7th species to approach Earth with private alliance offers in the 3 days since the Battle of Arcturus. The Confederate unity that had stood for centuries was showing its first cracks. That evening, Captain Ryu transmitted a secure update to Earth. Director Park received it in his office in Seoul, reading the report with growing satisfaction. 7 species now, he said to General Lee, who sat across from him. "The Confederacy is fracturing exactly as we predicted." "And the scourge?" Lee asked. "Still a threat," Park acknowledged, "but one that works in our favor for now. The Confederacy needs us more than we need them." Lee nodded, studying the star map on the wall. From protectorate to power broker in a single week. Not bad for a primitive species. Park smiled. Humanity has always been good at exceeding expectations, especially when those expectations are insultingly low. As night fell over Earth, the Thermopylae remained in orbit around Proxima Station, a physical reminder of the new reality. The galaxy had changed, and humanity was no longer content to sit at the children's table. The stars of the Deneb system shimmered against the backdrop of space. Here at the edge of known territory, the largest military force in galactic history had gathered. Over 800 ships from 26 species formed a massive formation spread across thousands of kilometers. At the center of this armada floated 3 identical vessels of human design, the UES Thermopylae. now famous across the galaxy, was joined by its sister ships, the UES Salamis and UES Marathon. Their dark hulls absorbed starlight, making them appear like shadows among the more reflective Confederate vessels. On the bridge of the Thermopylae, Captain Hyjin Ryu stood studying the tactical display. Her uniform was crisp, her expression focused. Around her, human crew members worked quietly at their stations, their movements precise and practiced. Status report. Ryu commanded. All fleet elements report ready, Captain, replied Commander Jizongyu from his station. Confederate vessels are in formation as directed. Scourge fleet estimated arrival in 17 minutes, added Lieutenant Sun Woo-yoon from sensors. Long-range scans indicate at least 400 vessels, including their command ship. Admiral Velen stood beside Captain Ryu, his blue skin contrasting sharply with the dark human uniforms around him. As tactical liaison between the human ships and Confederate forces, he had spent the past 3 weeks aboard the Thermopylae. What he had seen had changed his understanding of humanity forever. Your battle plan is unconventional, Velen said quietly to Ryu. But I trust your judgment now. Ryu nodded. Conventional tactics failed against the Scourge for centuries. We need to be unpredictable. Humanity seems to specialize in unpredictability. Velen replied with what humans had learned was a Mendari smile. The plan they had developed drew on centuries of human warfare, a history bloodier and more varied than most Confederate species could imagine. The near-extinction events that had nearly destroyed Earth had also forged a unique approach to survival. A soft chime sounded from the sensor station. Scourge fleet has arrived, Lieutenant Yum announced. They're deploying into attack formation. On the main view screen, hundreds of black, organic-looking ships appeared, pouring through what appeared to be tears in space itself. At their center loomed a massive vessel nearly 3 times the size of the Thermopylae. The Scourge command ship. Open channel to all Allied vessels, Captain Ryu ordered. When the channel was open, she spoke clearly and calmly. This is Captain Ryu of the Thermopylae. Execute battle plan Thermopylae 01. Human vessels will engage the command ship. All Confederate forces deploy as briefed. The massive Allied fleet began to move, breaking into smaller formations that spread out across the battlefield in patterns that would have seemed chaotic to an observer. But there was method in this apparent madness, a strategy based on human military history. The Scourge command vessel will deploy its disruptor field in approximately 3 minutes, Lieutenant Yun warned, eyes fixed on his displays. All Confederate ships should activate the countermeasure packages we provided. Throughout the fleet, ships activated the defensive systems Earth had shared, simple modifications that would protect against the Scourge's most devastating weapon. It wasn't the most advanced human technology, but it was enough to give their allies a fighting chance. The 3 human battleships accelerated forward, moving faster than should have been possible for vessels their size. They formed a perfect triangle as they headed directly toward the Scourge command ship. They're targeting us with their main weapons, Commander Yu reported. As expected, Ryu replied calmly. Activate gravitational shields. The space around the 3 human ships shimmered slightly as invisible forces bent the fabric of reality itself. When the Scourge weapons fired, green energy beams that had sliced through Confederate defenses in previous battles, they curved away from the human vessels, missing completely. Admiral Velen's compound eyes widened. You can bend weapon fire. We can bend gravity, Ryu corrected. The energy follows the path of least resistance. Around them, the battle had been joined. Confederate ships, emboldened by their new defenses, engaged the Scourge vessels directly. For the first time in this war, they were not immediately overwhelmed. The 3 human battleships continued their advance toward the Scourge command ship. Its massive weapons turned fully toward them, unleashing a barrage that would have vaporized a small moon. Now, Ryu ordered. The Thermopylae, Salamis, and Marathon suddenly separated, moving in 3 different directions with that same impossible speed. The Scourge weapons tracked too slowly, missing all 3 targets. Execute Leonidas Protocol, Rue commanded. From the underside of each human ship, smaller vessels deployed, fighter craft no larger than shuttles, but carrying single pilots. 120 of them swarmed toward the Scourge command ship. "What are they doing?" Velon asked, watching the small ships with concern. "Creating an opening," Rue replied. The fighters did not attack directly. Instead, they began flying complex patterns around the command ship, drawing its defensive fire and confusing its targeting systems. Where the massive vessel fired, the nimble human craft were no longer present. As the command ship focused on the fighters, the Thermopylae positioned itself directly above the larger vessel. The other two human battleships took positions below and to the side. Gravitational compression cannons, aligned configuration. Rai ordered, "Target their central power core." On all three ships, the terrible weapons powered up. But instead of firing separately, they synchronized, creating a triangular field of compressed space that surrounded the Scourge command ship. Fire. Space itself collapsed around the Scourge vessel. Its outer hull imploded first, followed by deck after deck. The compression continued, turning the massive ship into a dense ball of matter no larger than a small asteroid. The effect on the remaining Scourge fleet was immediate. Without the controlling intelligence of the command ship, they fell into disarray. Some fled, while others fought on, but without coordination. "All ships, advance," Rai ordered. "End this." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. Human battle doctrine, forged in Earth's numerous near-extinction events, combined with Confederate numbers, proved devastatingly effective against the disorganized Scourge forces. When it was over, the Allied fleet had lost fewer than 50 ships. The Scourge had been all but destroyed. 6 months later, representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations gathered in Seoul. Earth itself, a planet many Confederate species had never visited, hosted the most important diplomatic event in galactic history. The ceremony took place in a newly constructed building designed specifically for this purpose. Its architecture blended Earth's varied cultural influences with elements from other worlds, a physical representation of the new relationship humanity was forging with the stars. Director Taeyeon Park stood at the central table, the document before him representing months of negotiation. The text, written in 26 languages, dissolved the Galactic Confederacy and established in its place the Interstellar Alliance, a new organization where all member species would have equal standing. Park signed his name with a traditional ink brush, a nod to Earth's ancient traditions. Beside him, General Hae-Jin Lee watched as alien dignitaries approached the ceremonial table one by one. "They're still trying to understand how we developed so quickly," she murmured as a Lear representative added her signature to the document. "Some mysteries should remain mysteries," Park replied quietly. "At least for now." The truth that Earth's rapid development had been spurred by signals received from a dying alien civilization nearly a century ago would remain humanity's secret for a while longer. The knowledge they had gained, combined with human ingenuity and the drive to survive, had allowed them to leap forward technologically while the Confederacy had stagnated in peace. Across the room, Captain Ryu stood by a window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. The ancient palaces and temples stood alongside modern towers, and now, in the distance, a Confederate diplomatic ship hovering above the Han River. A year ago, humanity had been unknown to the galaxy at large. Now, they stood as equals, perhaps more than equals, with civilizations that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Captain Ryu. Admiral Velon approached, now wearing the new insignia of the Alliance fleet. "The Alliance Council has approved your proposal for the joint exploration mission." Ryu nodded. "The Marathon will be ready to depart within the month. We're eager to see what lies beyond known space." "With humans leading the way," Velon observed, "I suspect we will find more than we expect." As night fell over Seoul, lights began to shine in the city below and in the ships above. Whatever came next, Humanity would face it not as the galaxy's newest species, but as a leader in the cosmic community, a role earned through both wisdom and strength. The end.